You're tuned in to the Dr. Kinney Show, and I'm your host, Dr. Erin Kinney, a naturopathic doctor and speaker dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of your body and guiding you back into balance. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Kinney Show. This week I have joining me Dr. Sara Poldmae, who's been on the show before, and I'm really excited to have her back. She is now Dr. Sara Poldmae. I think when you first came on the show, you had not gotten your doctor.
I think I had just gotten it.
Maybe you had just gotten it.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. She had just gotten it. But she is a doctor of Chinese medicine and a certified functional practitioner, and I'm really excited to have you here today.
Same.
We're going to have a chat about menopause and some things that go along with it. Yeah. So maybe you can reshare with listeners kind of your journey into this field.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I got into acupuncture and Chinese medicine because I was a horrible migraine sufferer. And once a migrainer, always a migrainer. I think people forget that or don't know that. So I still feel weather. Like the past few days, I was really fighting, just feeling migraine-y. I never got a migraine, but my body changes with barometric pressure changes. But acupuncture basically saved my life as far as I'm concerned, because I was ending up in the emergency room with migraines. It was back before there were preventative drugs for migraines. And so I just fell in love with the medicine, and fast forward, ended up becoming an acupuncturist and then getting my doctorate. And I just really love helping people explore all the options that are out there, because Western medicine is amazing for certain things, but there are other options, and self-care being such an important part of our healing journey, learning to take care of yourself, learning to rest. Yeah. Like I had to rest the past few days. And it's just such a beautiful thing to be able to help guide patients through that journey.
Yeah. And she now owns this amazing clinic here in Annapolis, and you help so many women and men. You help all kinds of patients suffering from all kinds of things, which is fantastic. But yeah, it's really amazing how well acupuncture works for migraines.
Yeah.
So amazing. And my favorite thing about acupuncture, like personally and for my patients, is obviously, the needles and all the points do amazing things, but you get this uninterrupted nap or sleep or rest, right? And so, you talked about how you needed to rest, and sometimes our body needs that.
Absolutely.
And it's really great when you're going to acupuncture once or twice a week and you get this built-in rest, and your body, I don't know, I feel like I go and my body's like, oh yes, this is time. I get to just totally chill out.
Right.
So I think you get like a double benefit there, right?
Absolutely. I always thought of like when I'm not busy or when we have open rooms in the clinic, just setting up Naptown naps, because half the battle is to get people to just lay down for half an hour.
It's one of my favorite prescriptions for my patients is like, hey, just take 10 minutes. But sometimes, and I do this practice a lot, but sometimes if you're in your own home, it's hard because you open your eyes and you see the laundry that needs to be folded and you hear whatever noises and your dog wants to go out. But when you're in, a beautiful, serene space and there's nobody bugging you, it's fantastic.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So I took a journey into women's health many years ago, and I specialized primarily in fertility. And hormones are hormones, right? Yeah. They're the same sex hormones as at play throughout puberty, struggling with fertility issues, and then perimenopause and menopause. And I actually, about 5 years ago, got a lot of symptoms associated with perimenopause. And I think it was because I was running too hard. Yeah. And I had a lot of things going on in my life, both personally and professionally, and ended up with a cardiac incident, which led me through a variety of doctors, from my primary to my cardiologist, and Dr. Kinney took care of me. And I got well. I was able to get off of the meds that they put me on, but I was in a real crisis state, which was largely due to hormonal fluctuations. And frankly, I was really scared. And given that I had read all this information in textbooks and, was equipped with the knowledge to help myself, but still felt so powerless, really gave me a strong sense of purpose that I needed to transition into this type of care for my patients in this particular phase of their lives, and to let them know that perimenopause and menopause are completely natural things that if we live long enough and we're lucky enough, we get to go through perimenopause. So shifting our mindset, there are symptoms that can come along, but we get to experience them, and we get to learn what it takes with our body to get through this time of life, and maybe even make it the best time of our lives.
Yeah. And I think, we were chatting last week about what we're going to talk about today, and talking about just the mindset. It's just, and it's really interesting. Anyone listening, if you're on social media and you're a female in your 30s and 40s, you're seeing a bunch of stuff that's like, you might be in perimenopause if you have XYZ. And I think I watch them and I'm like, wow,
I'm technically in that age group, and I'm like, I actually don't think I'm quite in perimenopause, but now I'm like, every time I get a headache, I'm like, is this perimenopause? Is this that? Like, do I need to go talk to my doctor about this? Right. And so I think it's, there's a very fine line in you want to know what's going, you want to pay attention to your body, and you want to find out what's happening, and you want to be your own advocate and make sure that you're telling your doctor what's happening. But I think there's also a little bit of a fear thing that's going on. That's like, and here's the thing, you go to your primary care or even your OB or your GYN and you're like, hey, I'm in perimenopause, they're not going to really have too many options for you.
Right.
They might be like, oh, we can put you on the birth control pill, but that's not really what your body's asking for, right?
No.
A lot of the symptoms, in your case, I think you said it first off, you're like, I was running really hard. Yeah. And this is a time where the body's going through so many changes and you do need extra rest. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be completely stop your life. Your life changes. Your lifestyle has to change a little bit, right?
And it's interesting because our culture doesn't really acknowledge how our lives can change in different phases of our lives. We don't prepare ourselves for that and make those shifts. We continue to exercise the same way. Yeah. We continue to push the same way. And maybe this is a time for us to step back and look at our feminine power in a different way and see what opportunities are brought to the table because of that. And that's such a beautiful thing that isn't really talked about. So we go into this fear-based social media world, and there's a lot of valuable information out there.
Oh, yeah.
I do think midlife women should be, eating more protein.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
I do think we should be adjusting our exercise routine if our body says, because I was doing a lot of high intensity cardio, and that's probably why my heart was like, no,
you can't do that right now.
No, you could do that in your 30s. You can't do that in your mid 40s. At least I couldn't. Some women can. But I think it's just such an opportunity that is talked about and acknowledged in other cultures. Like in Chinese medicine, we have 7-year cycles for women. And if you were to ask someone in the Western world, like, what are the 7-year cycles? They'd be like, what the heck are you talking about? So we don't acknowledge the different ways that our lives should shift, not only from a health perspective, but just from a personal perspective.
Yeah, and what's going on, right? I mean, I think I always say to women, I'm like, the only thing constant about being a woman is change. Yeah. And it is about every 7 years, your body is going to go through a major change. And typically for women, it's a major hormonal change, right? Like the first big one is we go through puberty, and then, we've got and then maybe you're birthing babies, and then you're in that postpartum time, and then you're in the perimenopause, right? So it's like every 7 to 10 years, your body's going through a major change, and you do kind of have to readjust what your lifestyle looks like.
Yeah, and keep up, men.
Yes.
I mean, these poor men in our lives.
But they're supposed to be the stable rock, right? They're supposed to be there. They're not supposed to change.
Right.
I always love it. I feel like I went to a wedding once, and the father of the bride got up and he gave a toast, and he was like, men marry women hoping they'll never change, and women marry men hoping they will. And he's like, sorry, everybody. Like the opposite happens.
Right, exactly. I love that.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, one of the things that I see when people come into my clinic, when my patients in midlife come into my clinic, is that they just want the fix, a million different supplements and an answer to all of their problems. And often the answer lies within. I think mindset is such a big step. Like, how do we want to live our lives over the next few years? Setting up our days and our years in a more intentional way, and really acknowledging like what we want and what we need and how much rest we need and how much joy and excitement. Because if you ask a midlife woman what their hobbies are and what they like to do, there's often this like look in their eyes of disappointment and, ooh, I don't know, because maybe
they haven't done anything for themselves in a while, right?
Their kids have just left, and they're left with this void, so they're walking around the house just kind of,
like, what do I do with myself?
Yeah. So I think finding joy and finding rest and, the basic building blocks of what we would consider a happy and whole life are just as important in our wellness plan as the probiotics, as the magnesium,
100%.
And all of that.
I would argue maybe more important, right? Like, I think, supplements are fantastic, but they're really only going to get you so far. Yeah. And, I think a lot of times in this like menopause time, the body is trying to tell you that it needs joy or rest. Mm-hmm. And recently I had a patient that I've been treating for a couple years, and she's her periods just stopped, and she works a really stressful job, like really high intensity. She works like 100 hours a week. She's got 3 kids. Like, she's doing it all. And her body just, excuse my French, was like, fuck you. And she just had to take 2 months off of work. She got Bell's palsy. I mean, her body was like, let me give her the thing that is going to, like, she couldn't talk. She couldn't show up. And she was like freaking out. But it's really, I just saw her last week, and it was really cool. She's like, I'm kind of embarrassed that it took this to get me here. She's like, but I'm completely going to change my life. She's like, fantastic. My work is going to let me work from home. And she's like, I'm rethinking things, and my body needs more rest, and I need more joy in my life. Yeah. And I was like, wow. I mean, I know it was a journey to get here, but what a cool. And she came up with that realization on her own, which I think was really cool.
With the help of some pretty radical symptoms.
Yes. Well, exactly. Her body was like, let me try to tell you. And I think sometimes the body, I know I get migraines occasionally as well. And my body it's like when I'm like at my max, my body will start to give me the signs. And I know when one's coming. And if I listen to my body, I'm like, you know what, I need to say no to this. And then I don't get one. But if I don't, and I keep pushing, and I don't drink water, and I keep going, I don't sleep in or whatever, I will get one. And my body, it's like, in a migraine, if you don't take meds, the only thing that makes you feel better is laying down in a dark room. And that's what my body wanted, right? It wanted to lay down in a dark room. So and we usually get it.
I know. My mother had horrible migraines just like I did when she was a teenager, same pattern. And then again, when she was 50, she said basically her year of 50 was debilitating migraines all year long. Wow. And I think that I've saved myself from that because I've got some tools in my tool belt now. Yeah. I've paid attention enough to know when they're coming or when they're most likely to come, whether it's weather or stress or not getting rest or getting the wrong type of exercise. So, I'm very grateful to not be experiencing debilitating migraines, but man, like your body will tell you. Symptoms are not just a hassle to get through and get the quickest fix. They're an opportunity to learn to listen to our bodies. And really, we've become so disconnected. I have so many patients, I'm sure you do too, when you ask how their sleep is, they tell you what their Oura Ring told them. Yes. And there's no problem using Oura Ring, but like if I ask you and you tell me what your technology said instead of saying, I felt great this morning.
Yeah. I have some patients that are like, well, I think I sleep well, but my Oura Ring tells me otherwise. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it's kind of funny. Well, great technology, but Right. But I think you're right. Most of us have kind of lost touch, and we push through so much in our culture, right? Like, I got a headache, but I'm going to push through. Or my stomach hurts, so I'm going to push through, or whatever it is. Yeah. Or I'm really tired, I'm going to drink some caffeine. I'm not going to go lay down, or I'm going to make myself go to the gym even though I'm exhausted. Right.
Well, we're prioritizing the outside world and goals and other people's needs and so many other things besides prioritizing the one body and spirit that we live in. And I think that that's really unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I have a message on the show. My main message is like, hey, if you're going through something, it is really beneficial to find a practitioner or provider or someone who's going to help give you support and is going to help. I loved how you said that like that answer kind of lies within. So you are the one that's going to figure out what your body needs, but sometimes it can be helpful to have a good outside person who's going to listen to you and give you some options and give you some ideas. But at the end of the day, it's really your journey, and it's your, I usually sometimes I'll say like, listen, this is what your labs, this is what I think your body's telling me, but that's me telling you, right? That's not, and I know you practice like this as well. Like it's really all about you. So I think being informed and understanding what symptoms might mean or what you might need is really helpful. But it can also be really helpful to get support.
It's like a double-edged sword because we live in this age where there's so much information and so much of the information is utter crap. Yes. And then there's a lot that's valid information, but I often think, women are sick of hearing, I need more protein, I need more fiber, I need this. The repeated messages they're getting inundated with on social media because there's so many of them that they're like, where do I start?
And you feel really overwhelmed. Yeah.
Because you can't do all the things.
No, especially when you don't feel your best.
Right? Exactly. So that's where a practitioner is so nice. Not only can we, look at things from a more clinical perspective, but we can also help you to prioritize. Yes. What do you do first? If there's a list of 100 things we should all be doing, maybe I can help you to pick out the top 5.
This is the one that your body needs the most. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Let's focus on this. And I think that brings up a great point. It's really hard to make lifestyle changes, right? It's not easy to do, and it's definitely not easy to make 5 of them at once. Right. Like, it's really hard to be like, okay, I'm going to cut out alcohol and gluten and sugar and start to walk for an hour every day and get a massage and go to acupuncture. That sounds fantastic, but it might it might take a while to get you to that point. So I think, coming up with, hey, what is the one thing I can change? Like take baby steps. And
get that concreted. It takes how many days? Like 30 days to create a habit?
Yeah,
something?
I've heard a lot of different things on habits.
But it takes 30, a while.
Yeah, it takes a while. Yeah, you got to like get, and I think, I was talking to a patient the other day that they were like, oh, it's the same. They were like, I see all these lists of all these things I should be doing. I feel so overwhelmed. And they're like, and I do these 5 things, but I hate them. And I'm like, here's another thing. There's a lot of different ways to wellness, right? I think you want to choose the things that make you feel good because you're more likely to do them, right?
Yeah. I had a patient the other day who had a pretty traumatic brain injury, and she's finally coming out of the fog. And her neurologist, and this just brought so much joy to me, her neurologist told her that, we can build new neural pathways, and he recommended to her as a part of her healing process, because now that she's clinically considered well and cognitively is doing okay, not like she was before, but he said, one of the things that you've been doing is crying a lot, and that's common with people with brain injury. He said, I want you to find something that you can do for 20 to 30 minutes every day that brings you joy, whether it's a puzzle, reading, and it could take you a while to really figure it out, because sometimes we think things bring us joy and then we realize I've just been doing them for a while, so I'm used to them. But he said 20 to 30 minutes of something that brings you joy every day will start to reconnect your neural pathways. And she was like, I can't believe it. I'm so excited. This was my doctor's orders. And I'm
that's fantastic. I love to
hear that. I was so happy to hear that coming from a neurologist.
Yeah. But it's true. When you do things that you love, it's going to excite all kinds of pathways in your brain.
Yeah.
And it just makes you feel good. I mean, that's at the end of the day, we all want to feel good. So why not choose to do so? And
absolutely.
That's usually it's usually on every single, treatment plan for my patients. We'll talk about, I'm like, hey, I need you to find something that you do. And it could be for 10 minutes a day that you love doing. Yeah. And this is particularly goes for women, because women, we constantly give to others, right? We're constantly taking care of others. We're, we put ourselves last, and that can get exhausting. And the body, it's particularly during perimenopause, is like, no, we're not doing that anymore. Like, you need some time and attention.
Right. And it's, it's the holiday time, and I have patients shopping, and the look on people's faces. I'm like, if it looks that way on your face, you need to do the holidays different next year. I don't care what you say, because you look absolutely miserable.
Because the holidays are there's supposed to be some element of fun and magic there, right?
Right,
like
absolutely.
It's trying to find that. I know you mentioned that the neurologist was saying puzzles. I am such a fan of jigsaw puzzles. For the past 2 years, I got one of those puzzle boards, and you can store it, move it around. But I always have a 1,000-piece puzzle going, and it's great. I feel like I come home, and I think it's good to find an activity that occupies your brain a little bit, particularly if you're got a lot going on. Like, my brain's already always moving really fast. But so I come home and I do a puzzle, and it, it's calming to my body. I enjoy it. I feel a sense of accomplishment. I get 10 pieces, and I'm like, but it's finding something like that kind of lights you up, that you get excited about. And, and sometimes it might take practice to find that.
It does. And, I think a lot of women are the primary providers of food in the household. So I love to cook, but I do not like to cook when I'm feeling rushed right after work, and then I have to find a recipe. So one thing I love to do is actually find a recipe that's really exciting and new and fun, that sounds delicious, that I wouldn't normally make, and cook that on a weekend, because you can't really think about all the other nonsense while you're following a detailed recipe. So I love to cook, but I only like it in certain instances. And preferably something that's not going to feed the family or something.
It's like something you're going to enjoy for yourself.
Not to be selfish, but
but when you're cooking for family, it's more like a job.
Exactly.
Right? It's more like you have to get this done by this time, and I think that's the point of it. The things we're talking about to bring you joy, they shouldn't be like something that you have to do.
Right. And that was definitely something I prescribed myself, because the heart in Chinese medicine is involved with joy, and I think that I was doing things because I should, and I was exercising to, make my body look a certain way, and I was just doing a lot of things out of obligation. And I really stepped back and said, what can I do differently that's for me, because I have a daughter leaving for college. I need to find these things before I'm left with, those yucky feelings. And I think the empty nester syndrome was easier for me because
you've already done those things.
Exactly.
Yeah. So our main message with this talk, guys, is yes, it's definitely good to go and find out what does your body need nutritionally, and with Chinese medicine or whatever your preferred method to physical wellness is. But this piece, I don't know what even, it's the joy piece I think we're really talking about. It's like finding what's going to bring you joy.
Right.
And it might be like saying no to a bunch of things and be like, nope, I'm going to go do my own thing for a little while and take care of myself.
I've been saying a lot of no's lately, and it feels good. If it's not a hell yes, it should be a hell no.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, that doesn't mean that family obligations will just fall to the wayside. But if you start to slowly make these shifts, your family does start to get it, and they see you becoming a happier, more whole person and less like frazzled, and they'll start to catch on too, because our energy, like what we put out in the world, maybe this sounds woo-woo for some of the listeners, but what we put out in the world, like that has a ripple effect.
Oh yeah.
You know, and our kids are watching in a way that they may not even know that they're watching, but our happiness and our, what we put out there of like, it's okay to be selfish, that's an amazing message, especially for our daughters, that I'm really trying to live lately. Like my daughter, you know, sometimes she doesn't love it because I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. But then she looks back and she's like, my
good
mom's
for
a
you,
boss
Mom.
babe,
Yeah,
you know, like,
but I think
doing
what's
it.
that say? It's like if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy, right? So
Right.
I think it's like when you do what's best for you to keep you in that good,
Absolutely
amazing place, everyone in your family and your friends, everyone's gonna have a better relationship with you.
Yeah.
And the example that you're setting for them is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I talk to a lot of women that are, you know, menopause, perimenopause, and they're really struggling with themselves physically. Their sex drive is low, and they're frazzled and they're stressed. It takes a toll on their marriage or their, you know, their romantic relationship because, you know, they don't feel like they can really be intimate or connect with a person. And and that has a big impact on, you know, again, the family dynamic, the life. And when your primary, you know, romantic relationship is not in a good place, that doesn't make you feel good, right?
Well, often, just like you said, that like cooking can be a job and it can be fun when it's not a job. Same goes for sex, because
Well,
a lot of
100%.
women are having sex as a job.
Yes.
I mean, maybe
Yes.
we don't label it that,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of women that are having sex with their husbands because they know that it will keep the marriage safe, the
But they're not
marital
enjoying it.
unit safe,
Yeah.
but they may not be doing it because it brings them joy. Not to say once you're having sex, it's not fun,
Yes.
but they may need to ask for a different type of sex or
Yes.
more
Yes.
foreplay or whatever it takes for a woman to be sexually truly fulfilled.
Yeah.
And that's not happening in a lot of midlife women's marriages, because our sexual needs change as well.
Oh, 100%. But I think, you know, if your cup is not full, if you're not finding joy in other areas of your life, it's very hard to get excited sexually.
Right, of course, because
so
you're like, I'm exhausted.
I'm exhausted, yeah.
I don't want anybody to touch me. I've given away everything I've got to give today.
Yeah. So I think starting with the things, you know, if you start there, if you're like, hey, what can I do that's going to bring me joy, that's going to make me feel like I'm full, that's going to bleed out into every aspect. And, you know, and again, I've got plenty of other episodes about, you know, what to do hormone nutritionally, that kind of stuff. Like, make sure that is in a good place as well. Of course. Work with a provider and that. But, you know, I think sometimes this piece that we're talking about, obviously with us, it doesn't. We talk to our patients, but like this gets missed a lot, right? When you go to like a hormone clinic and they pump you through hormones. I've had plenty of patients come in, like their hormones are all normal. They still feel like crap. Right.
Absolutely.
And I think that this is the piece that can be missing sometimes.
And it's a feedback loop, you know, the happiness hormones, the stress hormones, the sex hormones.
Oh, yeah.
You've said it before, you'll say it again.
Yes.
They're all connected.
They are all connected. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, again, it goes back to mindset and finding things that fill your cup. It takes the mindset work is important because it takes a positive mindset to take those positive actions, to make those changes, to set your days up intentionally to allow for space for things that bring you joy.
Yeah.
And that's hard work. This isn't
is
easy.
hard work.
It's
No.
not easy to turn on this selfishness.
Yeah, it's hard to like. It's basically setting internal boundaries, like
Yeah.
for your own schedule and your own time. And
Yep.
but when you do it, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And I think I've shared this probably in several episodes on the podcast and in just social media stuff. I feel like during the pandemic, I was getting divorced. My practice was going like crazy, and I was not taking care of myself. I was putting everybody else's needs. I was trying to be a single mom and be, taking care of all my patients. And we were growing, and I would come here. I would get here at 8 to the clinic, and I wouldn't leave till like 6 or 7 at night, and I would barely take a break. And I like crazy crashed in 2022. It was like a horrible crash, and I was in my late 30s. Like I wasn't even in, I wasn't, but I was having all the menopausal symptoms and all the, all kinds of symptoms. And I really had to take a step back and be like, okay, I got to set some boundaries. Like I got to take a lunch. I started with like, I got to take a lunch break. Like that was what I could do. And so I blocked an hour in my schedule, and that felt, after a while, it felt so good.
Right.
And then when I'd have days when I didn't have a lunch break, I was so cranky. I was like, I think once you do start to set the boundaries and give yourself more space, then when you don't get there, you're like, wow, no wonder I felt so crappy before. I didn't have enough time. Right. Like, I think it's about giving yourself more time.
It is. It is.
And I find what I find amazing, like looking back at my own journey, is, I thought that I like never had enough time when I was working so much. Now I work probably half the amount that and I feel like I have more time. Yeah. It's a weird, I mean, some weeks I feel like I'm strapped for time, but I think the more you give yourself space and the more you take for yourself, you're going to be so much more effective when you are on and when you are asked to do something, right?
Absolutely.
When you're burning the candle from both ends and you're super burnt out, it might take you 4 hours to answer all your emails.
Right.
I feel like when you're in a good place and your brain's sharp, you can probably do the same 4-hour work in 30 minutes, right? Or maybe an hour, right? So it's like you can shorten your...
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things that perimenopausal women complain about is brain fog.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how much are you trying to stack into your brain, and how many schedules are you keeping for people?
Yes.
Because often we have other calendars besides our own to be in charge.
Oh, yes. It's a lot of calendars.
I felt a sense of relief when my daughter went to college because I didn't have to micromanage her schedule anymore. And at first I was like, oh, should I not feel this sense of relief? But
no, that's really
because
nice.
It was like hard to be in charge of like my schedule, her schedule, the dogs, this, that, the other. And I only have one. So.
Yeah, I know. I now have 5 children, and it's a lot of schedules. So like, I actually got, I just have like blended families, and in September it was like the first month we were all in the house, and all the kids were all in these different activities. I got pneumonia. I got so sick.
Oh no!
Because I'd been so used to having kind of this time, and then it was like I had to rethink. And I think this is kind of goes back. There are going to be phases in life where you're going to have to sit down and be like, I'm going to have to rethink what my lifestyle looks like in order to get through this phase.
Yeah.
And so it's like constantly reassessing.
And I think it goes back to that 7-year cycle. I really do think there's something about every 7 years or so we get hit with that. And, life circumstances can change that timeline a little bit. But it is really important to go back to your mindset, set your days and years intentionally, and ask yourself what you need, because a lot of times we can go through life just dragging us along.
Yeah.
And that can make us really unwell. It's kind of like a bigger picture of like why people grab fast food. Like we get so busy that we just eat mindlessly. And I went by Chick-fil-A the other day. I know this is kind of off topic, but I went by Chick-fil-A in the morning, and it was really
the line was really
busy.
long.
I'm like,
oh yeah,
wow, for breakfast, guys. And then I told my daughter, she's like, yeah, they have great. Breakfast. I can't remember what it was, and I'm like,
something. They're always busy, right? Like Chick-fil-A is pretty busy.
Yeah. So,
but I think it's a good point. When you're super busy and you don't have time, like then you
make bad choices.
You make bad choices, yeah. And then your body feels extra not as good.
Exactly.
Which is tough.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a great chat.
Yeah, for sure.
So for people that are local, you want to talk about Meadow Hill?
Sure.
And where people
So
can find
I have 2 wellness clinics, Meadow Hill Wellness. I have an Annapolis clinic and an Edgewater clinic. And we offer mostly acupuncture, but we have a host of other wellness services. And I also have my own podcast, Midlife, Rise and Thrive, which is specifically geared towards midlife women. And Dr. Kinney has been a guest on my show as well. And I have the Rising Woman Project, which is my website that hosts not only my podcast, but any retreats that I have coming up. And I'm just super committed to empowering women to rise up to the highest level of happiness and wellness that they possibly can, and to live a life that's full of joy for them and those around them.
Yeah. And I think that's a good thing to end the show on. Like this, if you're in the perimenopause, menopause time, it does not have to be miserable.
No.
Right? There's a way, as you said when we started, that this could actually be the best season of your life.
Yeah.
And I think having that as your mindset going into it will change the outcome of what's going to happen for you.
Yeah, for sure. You're much less likely to be stuck in any of the symptoms you're experiencing if you walk in and say, I'm going to kick its ass,
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to connect with me on social media to find more helpful tips and information. You can find me at Dr. Kinney on all of the platforms. And please be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and/or a review. This helps grow the show so more people have access to this knowledge that leads to empowered healing. Love and light, and see you next week.